Hello. All right. I'm just seeing a few people file in. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I want to let you know that this program is being recorded and will be available on the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum website and YouTube page after this presentation. My name is Natalia Mercedes Rodriguez, and I am the Digital Content and Program Coordinator at Dyckman Farmhouse Museum. I want to thank you all so much for joining us for our virtual lecture series talking about race matters. Twice a year, we invite notable community leaders, esteemed scholars, to share their groundbreaking research on cultural history, racial identity, and social justice. Each Talking About Race Matters series is typically grounded in a unifying theme, and for this Hispanic Heritage Month, all three lectures will focus on the history and formation of Afro-Caribbean identity. I'm super excited to welcome the third and final speaker of this Talking About Race Matters series, Dr. Sophia Monegro. Dr. Sophia Monegro is a literary scholar working at the intersection of Black women's intellectual history, Dominican Studies, and Digital Humanities. She earned a PhD in African and African Diaspora Studies at the University of Texas at Austin. Currently, Dr. Monegro is a postdoctoral fellow in the Center for the Study of Race, Ethnicity, and Equity at Washington University in St. Louis. Monegro's research agenda democratizes access to archives that help account for Black intellectual production in the Atlantic world. Tonight, Dr. Sophia Monegro will be presenting Archival Justice, Black Dominican Studies Archive-Building across Samaná, Puerto Plata, and Ayiti. For centuries, memory workers, scholars, and data scientists have worked to repair the archival silencing of our Black past. This presentation introduces restorative justice and community-engaged approaches to building Black archives. Tonight, you will learn about the We Choose Freedom, Samaná, Dominican Republic, a digital collection documenting the papers of African-American descendant Samaneses, the Guerrilla Archiving Program currently based in Puerto Plata, and the forthcoming digital archive Cimarronas, a Black women's archive of Haiti, Quisqueya, a trilingual platform aimed at making Black women's histories as they travel across the Atlantic, Caribbean, and South America from the 16th to the 19th century accessible to diverse audiences using interactive animations, digital mapping tools, primary documents, multimedia essays, and site-based micro-documentaries. During the lecture, if you have any questions for the speaker, please use the Q&A function and selected questions will be answered after the presentation. We would like to thank you all again for attending, as well as sincerely thank our sponsors for this session, the New York State Council of the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature, as well as the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Sophia Monegro.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. So lovely to be in New York neighborhoods in a way. I miss my city so much. Thank you so much to the Dyckman Farmhouse Museum for inviting me for this lecture, and a special thanks to Patricia Bautista for putting in a good word. So I am going to share my screen here and get started. Very thrilled to be talking about a few of my projects. Um, all right, so archival justice. As Natalia kindly read my bio, I won't spend too much time on it myself. But I really wanted to highlight here that in terms of my training and how I arrived at this work, doing a lot of archival preservation in the Dominican Republic, a lot of it had to do with my training in New York City. I'm a New Yorker, born in East New York, raised in Bushwick before gentrification. And I spent 7 years at the Dominican Studies Institute right after I earned my bachelor's degree at the City University of New York in Harlem. I spent time at CUNY DSI really learning about how is it that you put together a cultural collection about a Caribbean people, about Dominican people to be specific. I started at Dominican Studies Institute as a volunteer, and I will speak throughout this presentation many times about the importance of volunteering and how pivotal it is to really forming your mission. If you are seeking to do cultural work, if you're seeking to do academic work, volunteering is so essential to really trying to figure out who your network is, what the values, what are your ethics. So I started developing that profile for myself at the Dominican Studies Institute, where I began by processing the collection of Dominicans, the Dominican Students Association. They had done really great activist work and some interesting political work, bringing Hillary Clinton to City College in Harlem in the early 2000s, late 90s. And after that, I had the pleasure of helping launch what folks that probably have some experience in Dominican studies or know about, which is the First Blacks in the Americas platform, Los Primeros Negros, which has really been this like groundbreaking digital humanities project, but it also has just set the bar, in my honest opinion, as to how do you make accessible information that is not just for scholars and researchers that are very like adept and highly educated, but we're talking about folks that are K through 12 educators, students in primary schools that are interested in just finding out more about their heritage, about their background. I think that First Blacks is such a great example of what accessible public-facing knowledge can look like. And at that juncture, I really started developing my profile around the importance of having information be open, free, having it be multilingual, right? First Blacks is in English and Spanish, and also being in a platform that is easy to navigate. That I didn't know these things as I was being exposed to them, but I started really developing a set of criteria of like, what kind of work do I want to do? What kind of work do I want to contribute to? I had the great privilege at the Dominican Studies Institute of helping build the first master's in Dominican Studies that is now housed at the Center for Workers' Education within CUNY, that is downtown close to Wall Street. And working with the director, Dr. Ramona Hernandez, I helped develop the syllabi that are now required for the degree. And doing that exercise of building syllabi, and this is very early in my career, I had yet to start grad school, I really got to understand the politics of translation, and how little there is in terms of Dominican history. And of course, I'm not just talking about Dominican history. When I say Dominican history, I'm talking about Ayitian history, right? The indigenous island that today houses the Dominican Republic and the Republic of Haiti was originally called Ayiti. And this early period of us comes back to 500 years. So how little there was in terms of developing a comprehensive syllabus that spoke to all of this 500 years of history really illuminated to me what were the gaps in scholarship, the gaps in what kind of educational resources do we have to be able to fill a syllabus that we can teach a master's in Dominican studies, which is very important in New York, where Dominicans constitute one of the largest Latinx groups in the entire city. So this is just kind of a little bit more of my background, so you have a context as to where I'm coming from. All of that training at the Dominican Studies Institute, the amazing colleagues that I made and mentors there, Dr. Lice Corniel Acosta, without whom I would not have been able to write my thesis, Anthony Stevens Acevedo, Dr. Ramona Hernandez, Sara Aponte, Jensen Ortiz, really being part of a community that takes the rigor of Dominican studies seriously and is very staunchly proud and also staunchly sure that this is needed. Really empowered me to go out into all of the many research and academic and community spaces that I've been at since I started my graduate career at the University of Texas at Austin, who has the largest Black Studies department in the United States. That was where I earned my PhD, and through the amazing resources at UT Austin, the great mentors that I had there, I was able to continue to contribute to the CUNY-DSI community and to Dominican Studies by being very plugged into Dominican Studies Institute and being very plugged into archivist initiatives on the island that I gained access to through the Dominican Studies Institute. So this is going to be in many ways a genealogy of my archival journey. So let's begin with some objectives. So during this talk, I'm going to introduce y'all to a couple of different online portals as well as archival initiatives. We're going to begin with the We Chose Freedom Samaná Dominican Republic Archive. That is a public access JSTOR archive. And then I'm going to talk about the legacies of We Chose Freedom that really are reflected in my own archival work and activism throughout Samaná and Puerto Plata, and how that has manifested into what I call the guerrilla archiving program. And I'm going to talk about folks' opportunities to possibly be a part of that. And then I will introduce folks to this new digital project that I am thrilled to be working on called Sin Marronas, a Black Woman's Archive of Ayiti Quisqueya, that recently earned a grant by the American Society of Learned, the ACLS, the American Council of Learned Societies, that is going to be similar to First Blacks, but we have a team that is all Black feminists, mostly all of us are Caribbean, young scholars that are really looking to add more multimodal and interactive features to the way that we're telling these digital stories. All right, so We Chose Freedom. We Chose Freedom really is the brainchild of Dr. Ryan Mann Hamilton, who is a dear colleague and friend at LaGuardia Community College in CUNY. And he is also a descendant of the African Americans that immigrated to what at the time was the Republic of Haiti. So in 1824, upwards of 13,000 African Americans began immigrating to the Republic of Haiti at the time. This was what I call, and what many historians are currently calling, the Haitian unification era of 1822 to 1844. And this is I would say, in a way, restorative historical practice, but some of us call it revisionist history, that really looks at the ways in which Haiti was making a proto-Black internationalist movement by inviting African Americans, Black folks from all over the Americas to come contribute to making the first Black nation of the hemisphere. Many African Americans took up that call, and thousands of them started immigrating in 1824 from places all over the Eastern Seaboard, from New York to Philadelphia to Maryland. Some folks walked from Ohio to take boats in New York City and make it to Haiti. Now, when this immigration occurred, the whole island was Haiti. So when folks immigrated, they didn't really have much of a context to know that they were moving into Spanish lands. A lot of the immigrants were being routed to what is the peninsula of Samaná and the northern region of Puerto Plata, because those islands had been, those regions had been heavily depopulated during las devastaciones of the early 17th century. In which Spanish colonizers forcibly removed, killed, and pillaged these areas that had been developed by, let's call them the proto-Dominican Ayitian people, and they were moved towards the center of Santo Domingo. So when this immigration began, this African American population was very much populating this very abandoned northern and east and peninsular part of the island. So their descendants are still there today. And for folks that have been to Samaná or somewhat familiar with Samaná history, you can still see the imprint of African American culture in the names of the businesses, in many of the cultural landmarks, such as the AME churches that are all throughout the peninsula, as well as in Puerto Plata. So I began in 2019 following Dr. Ryan Man Hamilton, who had worked with Bibliotecaria, the chief librarian, Sara Ponte, to earn a small grant from the Seminar on Acquisition of Latin American Library Materials to essentially preserve these documents that were in La Churcha. And La Churcha, the St. Peter's Evangelical Church, is this historic Wesleyan church that was literally brought over from London in the late 1890s and placed in Samaná. And it has historic connections to the African Methodist Episcopal Church. That was the reason that all of these African Americans really immigrated, was because the AME Church had fostered and facilitated this migration. They were one of the key sponsors of the migration, especially Richard Allen, who was the founder of the AME Church in Philadelphia. So I joined this team as a volunteer. I knew that the mission was important. I really wanted to get to know more about Samaná, and I really got introduced to the archival need present in Samaná and really in the larger Dominican Republic. In talking to Zoila Enriquez Mejia, who was the wife of the pastor at the time, I learned that the parishioners that kept going to this church kept asking her for these documents, and she was keeping them in this old suitcase that you see here. And these documents were baptismal certificates, they were marriage certificates, there were even birth certificates in there. And what I learned was that because of the 2013 sentencia, and for folks that are not familiar with the sentencia, it was a change to the Dominican Constitution that made it so citizenship was no longer based on birthright the way that it is in the United States, at least currently. It was now based on parentage and who was your parent. Are they of Dominican descent? Can you prove that? That was a critical way in which citizenship changed in 2013, similar to other countries do this, such as Japan. This became a severe human rights and civic and ethical issue. There were many panels, symposium, discussions amongst the Dominican community on the island and in the diaspora that were heavily concerned with this new class of citizenshipless Black Dominican, Black Haitian Dominican people. And due to this, these churches, these like local institutions throughout the Dominican Republic were serving a new need for folks that were looking to prove their citizenship to the state. And I came to understand this like unique intersection of how archival preservation has these social justice, these like very tangible social justice implications. And I then knew that working in Samaná and working in places throughout the Dominican Republic, because there are African descendants everywhere in the Dominican Republic, was not just about cultural preservation, and it wasn't just about finding sources for my future academic book. It was about providing people access to a vital document that could determine whether they could open up a cell phone bill. Without a cédula, which is one might equate to a social security card in the United States, there's so much that Dominicans don't have access to. So I really got introduced to the implications of this work, and I'm so grateful to Samaná and to Dr. Ryan Man Hamilton, who have continuously invited me and opened up their doors and really welcomed me in continuing to pursue and grow this project. So the summer of 2019, Ryan, myself, and Jensen Ortiz, who is a librarian, honestly, an amazing librarian, I just have to quickly say, DSI owe so much to Jensen Ortiz, an excellent librarian. all the three of us digitized over 500 documents. We categorized and ordered them. Um, we importantly also repaired them and provided plastic sleeves for individual documents so that they could be referenced without causing further damage. And um, we created all of the digitization of each individual document. And then with the data service folks at the City College of New York, Sarah Ponte and Jensen and Ryan continue to develop what today is the We Chose Freedom Samaná Dominican Republic archive. And I'm going to drop the chat to the archive. Rather, I'm going to drop the link to the archive in the chat so folks can access it. It is a public and free resource, and you can see all of the, a majority of, I think maybe 50% of the scans that we made are accessible on the digital archive, and it is one of the amazing examples of how community engaged work, right? Because we would have not been able to preserve this archive if it had not been for Zoila Enriquez Mejia, who knew that these documents were important and was doing the work of an organic archivist, essentially. She was literally the person that people would go to, and she would try to decipher the script to figure out if this was your parents' marriage certificate that that you were looking for. And I really highlight and hyphenate that because that's a lot of the methodological approach that I come with to this work. I see that throughout the Dominican Republic and Haiti, there are so many organic intellectuals. There are so many cultural workers that are already doing this work that then we come in with US degrees and US connections, and we show our universities, hey, this is valid knowledge production. But I think that it's so vital that we continue to speak to and really give credit to the fact that we're just here continuing a legacy of this knowledge production. This is not a novel thing. It is happening in different modalities and different spaces in virtue of online and webinars and all these things. But this is something that dates back to, I would say, 500 years ago with La Negra del Hospital. And I will speak more about who that is towards the end of this talk. So let's continue talking about Samaná. I essentially continued this mission of going to different AME churches for a couple of years. Samaná happened in 2019. Then the pandemic happened. I went back to Samaná every summer that I could. I was there in 2021, 2022, 2023. And I essentially tried to, as much as I could, go to different churches. I went to the African Episcopal Methodist Church in Limón, the AME Church in Las Terrenas, the AME Church in Juana Vicente, and all these different regions throughout Samaná. And I essentially would, draw on my existing community connections with the pastors to have them introduce me to the pastor in that specific region and let them know that I was there to do pro bono, free archival restoration work. How did I fund this? I was a graduate student, so I was constantly applying for every travel grant that the University of Texas had available. If you had any funding, you knew my name. And essentially, I practiced the same approach that Dr. Ryan Mann Hamilton taught me. We don't just come to these spaces and ask people to show us their papers. We come to these spaces with resources, and we leave resources, and we make their resources more accessible, right? So we always come with scanners. We come with professional archival equipment, preservation sleeves, asset-free tape, asset-free folders, gloves, and we always preserve the collection, leave it in an intact format, and we leave a scanner so that the church and whether it's the church or the interns of the church can continue to digitize whatever they need to digitize. And we train whomever is going to be in charge of that technology on how to use these scanners. So it's very much molded around these ideas of, to a large degree, restorative justice, and how is it that we can continue to like expand access while also giving back something to these spaces that have been deprived of resources for a set of neoliberal, post-colonial reasons that we can talk about more in depth during the Q&A. I digitized more than 1,000 documents between 2022 and early 2023. And this led to my development of a kind of methodological framework, right? For what I was doing and how I was doing it. Even though Ryan had taught me very much like, how is it that we engage? What is it that we do when we come? I'm not an anthropologist, so I didn't have words, or like I didn't have methodologies for what it was exactly that I was doing. So I just started fabulating them, and I came up with this term that I call guerrilla archiving. Guerrilla archiving, to me, I have this definition here, but for me, it really is informed by the fact that when the conditions are limited, whether it be under U.S. imperial conditions, whether it be warfare conditions, the guerrillero innovates in a space of liminality. And I think that that's often what happens when I am building an archive, y se va la luz, and I have to figure out how am I going to keep my computer alive so that I can continue scanning. How am I going to um, digitize a collection when I only have 500 sleeves and they have 1,000 documents? There is a lot of different things that happen in the field that you are not prepared for, especially coming from very sterile and, I would say, clinical archive conditions at national archives, especially in the United States when it comes to Congress, the archives at Congress. When it comes to Dominican Studies Institute, we have very up to date archival preservation protocols. But a lot of those things you need to innovate when you're in the field. So that is really where guerrilla archiving comes from, to emphasize that this is happening in a liminal space, and you need to be creative as to how you're approaching getting this preservation done, because you only have so many hours, and folks want to be able to access these papers. And I feel personal duty to make sure that they can access them for the longevity, not just for a generation, but beyond that. So with guerrilla archiving, I then, in a very New York fashion, was like, well, this I have to like institutionalize this. This has to be an organization or a business. It has to be something that lives on beyond me. So I founded Black Hispaniola LLC as an educational organization that collaborates with community workers and data scientists, universities, local organizations, to preserve these collections that are throughout the entire island. I started in Samaná, but now I'm expanding to Puerto Plata, and I hope to, after finishing the work in Puerto Plata, move on to go to San Juan de la Maguana and then the Jarón. And I aspire to be able to hopefully make partners in Haiti. I really am looking for folks that are also interested in preservation and cultural memory work in Haiti. I think that a partnership to expand to Haiti is so important, and that I find a partner that is very much embedded in the community and is of Haitian descent, because I think that, who we are and what our presentation and cultural affiliations matter a lot to the type of trust that we're able to make with communities. And I really want there to always be this like community first, communities comfort first approach to everything that Black Hispaniola does, and to everything that the Guerrilla Archiving Program produces. So we actually had our first run at the Guerrilla Archiving Program this summer, and it was based in Biblioteca Renovación in Puerto Plata. And I had found the Biblioteca Renovación collection while I was doing my Fulbright in 2024. And I was working with a really great colleague and friend, Elizabeth Milagros Alvarez, who is a doctoral candidate in urban planning at Columbia University. We were there looking for the Kingsley family archives. We have this very big project that I'll talk about at the end about the Kingsley family. Biblioteca Renovación is this amazing library space that actually began as Puerto Planteños, which is what folks from Puerto Plata call themselves, bringing together books in the 1880s. They had this collection of books that they would keep in the town, and then eventually the ayuntamiento donated a building that became Renovación, La Sociedad Renovación. And it's all based around the historical legacy of La Restauración and our amazing historical patriarch, Gregorio Luperón, who had a lot to do with the Freemasons in Puerto Plata and had really made Puerto Plata the center of intelligentsia and radical Caribbean movement. Puerto Plata played a very critical role in terms of organizing against Spanish Empire in the late 1800s. And there are such just amazing gems, Freemason papers, original letters from Gregorio Luperón, like true diamonds of historical work, of historical archival papers in this collection. So I knew as soon as I saw the room where they were keeping all these documents in very humid conditions, and this is often the case. People keep the papers in wherever they can keep papers, in suitcases, in the humid room that nobody uses. But from an archival preservation perspective, this is literally advancing the deterioration of the paper by decades. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, I need to come back here. I need to find money to be able to preserve this space. So it's very much in the process. I'm going to play this little reel for y'all. And I'll stay speaking. So that's a kind of a recap of what happened this summer. These are the amazing volunteers that came to the Guerrilla Archiving Program, and I will speak a little bit more about what is the volunteer, qualifications look like. I know folks are interested in that. But I really wanted to bring together a set of volunteers that had cultural investments in the Dominican Republic, that could speak and read Spanish. That's kind of like a critical requirement, and that had some type of previous experience, whether it be research experience or cultural work experience, doing cultural memory, multicultural studies in whether it be in the Dominican Republic or in the US. I found that there was like a plethora of people who were really interested, and we made a top-notch team. I have to highlight some of the amazing volunteers that we had this summer, which among them Lynn from the Biblioteca de Puerto Rico. I am so grateful that Lynn volunteered. I was so grateful to see this beautiful like Puerto Rican Dominican collaboration on a guerrilla project like this. Lire Santos was so essential from the NYU Multicultural Center. And Alvaro Ramirez, who is actually a cousin of a dear friend. I was so grateful for Alvaro and his extensive knowledge of Dominican historiography as somebody who was trained in La UAS and is finishing his degree there. I think it was so important that we had this really like multicultural mix of folks that are from the diaspora, folks that are actively living in Caribbean spaces like Puerto Rico, folks that are in the Dominican Republic and understand Dominican society in a way in which no one else can except if you live there. And I was so just in awe as to what beautiful volunteer work we could put together by having a very clear mission and bringing together amazing people. The folks at Biblioteca Renovación were so grateful and very opening and welcoming to the us taking over their library space and really figuring out what are the key words of this collection, how are we going to categorize this, how many repairs do we need to do, where are we going to put our scanning units. It was a whole week of really deep archival work and really long hours, but there will be a collection available soon, public access, like the We Chose Freedom archive, that will be housed within the Black Diaspora Library at the University of Texas at Austin. The Black Diaspora Library is part of the Lilas Benson collection at UT Austin. That is the largest Latin American studies collection in the United States. In addition to that, as part of all of the archival preservation work that I am doing from now forward, there will be digital copies of everything that is shared with the Lilas Benson in the Digital Library of the Caribbean, DLOC, which is also an open access platform that is very important for folks that study Caribbean studies, that study their ancestry. It is so important. Anybody who's doing a digital project, please give a copy to DLOC. They're doing excellent work preserving all of the many collections that we're making. And they also have a significant gap in Dominican studies, so they are looking for our collections as well. So now going on to kind of the digital humanities tilt that I have kind of found myself in, really in virtue of doing the work with Samaná. I really became engaged in wanting to know more about the actual metadata creation of collections. I was at the end of when First Blacks launched. I started my full-time job at Dominican Studies Institute literally the fall that First Blacks was launching. So I was part of all of the PR for it, but I wasn't there for the like 10-year process that it took to make the marvel that is First Blacks. And I don't know if Sin Marronas will take me 10 years, but I'm game, however long it takes. This is my brainchild that I'm about to share with y'all, and it's really a collaborative brainchild. I have such a stellar team on board that I'm going to speak about in the next slide. But introducing Sin Marronas, a Black woman's archive of Ayiti Quisqueya, which seeks to tell multimodal, accessible stories about radical women in what today is the Dominican Republic and the Republic of Haiti, originally the island of Ayiti. These stories span from the 15th to the 19th century. They include women like the first recorded Black women of the Americas. They include women like Ana Caona. They will be multimodal stories that have biographical narratives. They will have interactive animations where we will be visualizing what these women look like, even if we do not have depictions of them. We will also be including micro site-based documentaries by collaborating with Afro-Historia RD. So for folks that don't know about Afro-Historia, please follow them on Instagram, hashtag Afro-Historia. It was founded by the amazing Ruth Pion, who is a dear friend, incredible archaeologist, anthropologist, activist, and honestly, one of the most brilliant young minds in the field currently. And I say that from the sense of restorative justice and from the sense of like intellectual rigor. Ruth is a credit to our field. She founded Afro-Historia to address the lack of Black history and Black commemoration that is happening in the Dominican Republic. So I actually find it very, very vital to talk about how when it comes to public commemoration in the United States, we have had a reckoning, especially in the South. And as somebody who earned a Southern degree, I feel very integrally tied to the movement of bringing down Confederate statues and finding restorative justice approaches to how to reconstruct these spaces in ways that include ethnic studies, that include especially Latinx and Black histories. And I think that the Dominican Republic is due for a reckoning of a similar degree, especially because in the colonial zone of Santo Domingo, it is just like no other place in the world when it comes to the idolization and idolatry of Spaniardness and the colonizers. It's very fascinating to the degree that it is perplexing. Um, there is this statue of Christopher Columbus in Parque Colón that was donated by Italy, and everywhere they were looking for a Latin American country that would want this statue. And the only country that raised their hand was the Dominican Republic. This statue and a lot of the commemoration around the locality of Santo Domingo does not include any mention of Black life, of the enslaved stonemasons that created the fortalezas, of the first Black woman, of the first recorded Black woman of the Americas that founded what then became the first European hospital of the Americas. There is like just a complete erasure of amazing radical Maroon leaders like Sebastián Lemba, who was literally lynched and displayed in this colonial zone. So, given the amazing radical work that Ruth was doing and my collaborations with her throughout 2024, I felt a commitment to continue to bolster anything that I could related to Afrohistoria, which was kind of how Cimarronas came to be. It really has come from like critical interlocking with Ruth, being part of her decolonial tours, and myself, and adding my my scholarship about La Negra del Hospital to her tours, and also seeing the immense human rights justices happening and abuses of the tour guides that do her tours, including herself, the death threats, the anti-Black comments that they deal with online. It's just astronomically unfair. And I felt that there's just so much access that I have and can facilitate in my position in the academy. And this is how the Cimarronas grant really was formed, through that collaboration, through working with my colleague who I had mentioned, Elizabeth Milagros Alvarez, who does amazing work with ArcGIS mapping, and also with Penelope Tejeda, who used to be a research assistant at the Dominican Studies Institute and has been quintessential to helping me establish Black Hispaniola LLC, as well as all of the digital content that you can find on my page. Really, through these kind of like streams of love and communal like mission, is Cimarronas. It is going to really open up these stories in a way that is fully public facing, and it will do the function, the research and rigorous function of making like 16th and 15th century paleography documents that people have not seen available. We're starting with a 50 document data set that will be translated from the historical Spanish into contemporary Spanish, into English, and into Haitian Creole. The platform will be trilingual to show our commitment to language accessibility and to telling cross-national stories, transnational stories, and to really getting at Ayiti as an indigenous decolonial call. We're currently in conversation about the Ayiti Quisqueya part, and I would love to get your take on this if anybody wants to kind of chime in the chat. But I feel that it's important that the title include both, because there are identification questions, there are identification like priorities for, I want Dominicans and Haitians to see their stories in this platform. But as folks who are specialists know, Quisqueya is not a historical name for the island. And it's something that, because I know that there are a couple professors in the chat, I'm just going to throw out there as like, what's your take on it? And in addition to the amazing resources that we hope to provide here, I really hope that Cimarronas is going to really shift the conversation in terms of what intellectual Caribbean history can look like and who constitutes an intellectual in Caribbean history. This is work that I am like currently tackling through my scholarship and my article on La Negra del Hospital that I will share in the chat shortly. But I just wanted to take a second here to plug the amazing team that is behind Cimarronas. I'm just gonna take a sip of water. Like I mentioned, Ruth Biong, who is the founder of Afrohistoria RD. If you don't follow them, please go and follow them. Elizabeth Milagros Alvarez, who is my amazing co-PI. and based at Columbia University, doing excellent work in terms of studying gentrification in Cabarete, in the north of the Dominican Republic. The formidable Margarita Rosa, who many folks might know from Instagram, a historian out of Princeton, and a really committed to public facing scholarship and making people's genealogies and histories something that everyday people can engage with regardless of whether you are studying this as a profession or not. The amazing and very generous Dr. Elise Mitchell, who is an assistant professor at Swarthmore College and a historian of early modern Caribbean and really Atlantic diseases, really studying Africans' contributions to inoculation practices against smallpox and other types of Atlantic diseases that afflicted everybody in the Atlantic world, but that Africans had specific botanical and medicinal knowledge about. And Sophia de la Cruz, who is my dear mentee, I call her Sophia too, and one of the most honestly rigorous and active and just devoted young scholars out here doing amazing restorative justice work, currently in juvenile services in Washington, D.C. after finishing her bachelor's degree. So it's a formidable team. I am so very excited about what we're going to produce. And I will speak briefly about some of the stories that you're going to see in Sin Marronas. Currently, the grant that we're working on to make the beta of it is set to end in February 2027. So we hope to launch for Black History Month in 2027. And we're going to start off with 4 stories. Those 4 stories will begin with Anacaona. And we're having an amazing Black feminist Haitian scholar, Dr. Sabine, help us write the Anacaona story, because we find it very critical that a Haitian scholar write the Ayitian cacique, cacica story. And we're also then going to be telling the story of La Negra del Hospital, which is my personal research on La Negra del Hospital has luckily manifested in an article that I thought I had up, but I don't see the link here for it now, but I will share it before this webinar is over. La Negra del Hospital is the first recorded Black woman of the Americas. And as I talk about in my article, there's very little that we know about her. We really have these 2 archival documents that really tell us that she was in the region of Santo Domingo before the 3rd governor of the Americas, Nicolas de Obando, arrived with the first embarkation of enslaved Africans in 1502. What I have found through writing this article is that La Negra del Hospital was actually not in Santo Domingo. She was in the riverbank, close to the riverbank of what today is Santo Domingo. She was close to the Osama River, healing people in what at the time was the Cacicazgo de Higüey, and had yet to be fully colonized by Spaniards. When La Negra del Hospital was healing people, there were a total of 300 Spaniards in the entire island. And they were disparate and buried in many different locations due to their 2 failed settlement attempts in the northern part of the island, La Isabela and La Navidad. So they had actually set up a Santo Domingo Villa. The Villa de Santo Domingo was originally established by Bartolomé Colon in 1498. That was actually to the west, close to Rio Jaina, where they had gold mines that they were exploiting through indigenous labor, likely mostly Taino, Arawak, Carib indigenous people. So La Negra del Hospital was leagues away from where the colonizers had their settlement. She was not in Santo Domingo. Santo Domingo was moved to where she was in 1502 when Nicolas de Obando decides that he's going to move the Villa to the Rio Sama because there was a hurricane that occurred that wiped out most of the Villa. So they decide to relocate to Rio Sama because it is a better organic port than the Rio Jaina. I talk about how La Negra del Hospital had likely many ethnobotanical practices that made her practice successful, and this is why people started donating to her practice. I talk about the ways in which these are early forms of mutual aid. And in virtue of the way that archivists have talked about her, especially archivist Archivo General de las Indias, um, that she had a room in her bohío where she was specifically curing women. I talk about her as the early formations of Black feminist thought in the hemisphere through her practice, right? Oftentimes, when we're thinking about political theory, people think about someone's manifesto or their speeches or lectures, but we don't have those things when we're talking about early colonial, early modern women in Santo Domingo and Ayiti. What we have is like glimpses and fragments of their actions. So the way that I do Caribbean intellectual history is by really reading political theory into action, right? What are the actions of these women, and how can we talk about what political theories they were espousing to the world? What acumen were they showing to the world that we can now talk about as, as their political opinions, as their philosophical, in ways of imagining and recommitting to the communities that they cared about. So this is a few things that I discussed in the paper, and I'm going to drop the link, like I said, shortly in the chat. For folks that are interested in checking it out, please download it within the next 28 days. It's free for the first month, and after that, it will no longer be public access, but the article is currently public access, and that is thrilling to me as somebody who really cares about accessibility. So finally, what I think a lot of folks are probably interested in, a lot of people have been talking to me about whether they can be part of the Guerrilla archiving program. They want more information. I'm going to drop in the chat now the link to my newsletter, where I will be announcing the Guerrilla archiving application for 2027. For 2026. What year are we in? So for 2026, we will be returning to Biblioteca Renovación in Puerto Plata and continuing to process the collection that is based there. Through our work this summer, we processed over half, it feels like, of the collection, but there is more than half to go, and we need to develop a comprehensive preservation, long-term preservation strategy for the library. So we are going to be bringing some trusted colleagues from Santo Domingo to discuss about what long-term preservation looks like on the island. A lot of this is us showing up and talking to the right people and bringing people into conversation. But I'm thrilled to be really doing this work with folks who are Dominican and of the diaspora and Dominican the island, and are really committed to archival preservation, to making these like sources accessible. So if you're interested in Guerrilla archiving, please sign up for the newsletter, because it's the only way that, and as well as following me on Instagram, I will provide my contact information here. Because that is where you'll find out when the application drops. And yeah, that pretty much concludes my presentation for today. I think we have a few questions. I always want to leave a lot of time for questions, because I'm really here to dialogue and convene with folks. Thank you, everybody, for attending this conversation.
Thank you so much, Sophia. We got a lot of questions a part of the Zoom registration. To start, what kind of training and credentials, what kind of training do we need to participate in guerrilla archive?
Yeah, so for the Guerrilla archiving program, I will be providing a set of like questions that you'll fill out on the form, and based on how you score on these things is whether you'll be called in for an interview. The main requirement is that you speak and read Spanish. This is a bilingual space. So folks are welcome to speak in English and Spanish with their peers and their other volunteers. But in terms of interlocking with our community partners, with the patrons of the biblioteca, as well as the amazing staff that they have, such as Patti and Patricio, we really want to be able to have a like, a very multilingual, inclusive space. In addition to that, I really do prioritize that folks have some type of like training or background, whether it be in cultural studies, whether you work in museums, or if you are in education, if you do any type of like programming for multicultural events. I'm just interested in folks that are cultural workers, whether you do that in institutions or organizations or community driven initiatives, not specific to it doesn't require any specific type of degree or anything of that sort. I'm really looking for experience and a shown evidence to being part of a mission, whatever that mission may be, art, education, um, any type of like, cultural production. But it is a kind of like interview and figure out if you're a good fit kind of criteria, but Spanish is the one eligibility requirement.
Thank you for letting us know.
Mhm.
Um, the second question is, what has been the biggest challenge of conducting archival work in the Dominican Republic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that more than anything, the built environment. I would not say that I've had anybody be um, apprehensive about ceding me space or opening up their collections to me. I'm very cognizant of like my positionality within the world, right? I am a woman who presents as feminine. I am light skinned. I have pretty privilege. These things very much impact whether people want to speak to you. And I'm very cognizant and I acknowledge my biases in like in this. I think it's very important that we be very transparent about positionality when we're writing about these things. But I think that in regards to what actually has caused a challenge, it has been when the light leaves and I didn't charge the battery pack that I bring, so that I can keep my computer alive. So then I only have 4 more hours of scanning, and it already took me 2 or 3 hours to get here because I had to get in the back of a camion, and travel with the market women who were talking to me about how expensive the aguacates are. And it's really about the built environment becoming a barrier, right? Sometimes there are storms. Sometimes there is no opportunity to work indoors and we have to set up a tent because we're really trying to be public facing and we want the community to see what we're doing so that they can talk to us about it. So it's more than anything, I would say the complexities of living in a global South underdeveloped space is what gets are the challenges that I've encountered so far.
Sharing. The next question is, what does restorative justice look like in practice?
Yeah, I really love that question. For me, I think that restoring, trying to bring access to these specific spaces, right? I'm thinking about Samaná and I'm thinking about Puerto Plata, that have not been well connected to the institutions that the Dominican Republic has set up for itself in Santo Domingo. Let me use this as an example. Digital Humanities in the Caribbean is like its own established field. They have their own conference, they have their own collectives at Yale University, and there are a lot of amazing projects that are coming out about Caribbean digital studies. I really recommend that people go check out sameboats.org or Unsilencing Slavery, that are projects about Jamaica, projects about like trans national traveling of people like Eric Sant, CLR James, and the way that they traveled across the Atlantic. But there is a gap when it comes to projects that are made right now in the United States about the Dominican Republic. A lot of the production is coming from the Dominican Studies Institute. So people that feel, oh, there's a gap, well, DSI's got it. Like they're actually leading it. They've actually been leading it for a while in terms of putting out amazing DH projects. But when it comes to who is producing digital projects or digital access on the island, it's happening, but it's all happening in Santo Domingo. Um, the like El Archivo General de la Nación has great digital archives that you can access. Sometimes they're down, but they're accessible. But they don't go out and like share this access with the libraries that are in Puerto Plata, with the like kind of like guerrilla style collections that form in Salcedo. They don't actually do any type of like nationwide comprehensive digitization and preservation. So I think that giving these spaces access to not just like the scanners and the archival equipment to preserve their papers, but to the skilled professionals that know, hey, you need to pick that up with a glove. You can't just put tape on that paper. It needs to be acid-free tape, or it's actually gonna make it deteriorate faster. So there is also like there's no cadre of professionals being trained in these spaces. There are no library sciences degrees outside of Santo Domingo and Santiago. So there is just a lack of actual resources. And to me, restorative justice in the sense of archives in Dominican Republic looks like coming to the space and leaving something more than just I came to scan, right? I'm leaving a scanner. I can't tell you how grateful the library patrons of the Biblioteca Renovación were that I left an Epson scanner, because their scanner takes 10 minutes to scan one page and the Epson scanner does it in 30 seconds. And there is just this like dire desire for these technologies. And I think that the way that we can do more ethical work in the Dominican Republic is by coming and bringing resources and leaving them there, not just not just coming, providing resources for a little bit. I mean, there's amazing work being done in terms of like building communities. There's a lot of missionaries that come and help like build different wings of the church and things of that. That's also great work. But when it comes to preservation, I think that we really need to start figuring out what is it that we're bringing that gets to stay there, and also how are we providing training for the folks that are already married, I mean, that are already like well established and have a long-term lifetime commitment to being in this space. So that has been my approach to really make sure that I'm leaving things that stay in the place, and that I'm taking time to talk to the youth in that institution, in that organization, spending time with the library docentes, and talking to them about what their career paths are, giving them access to how to use the scanner, how, if something goes wrong with it, how can they repair it, like really providing tools. I'm really interested in, especially because Biblioteca Renovación is such a beautiful space. I really recommend y'all go check out their Instagram. I learned a lot about how they've acquired their money, and they've done some really great renovations there. I'm really interested in figuring out how to bring some type of like digital humanities workshops there, where we can teach young Puerto Planteños how to make websites. Because there is like the digital era needs to be not just made in the West, because when we make websites only in the West, they don't load in DR. They don't load in the Caribbean. So there's a lot of different like levels of accessibility to me that I think is part of my restorative justice approach. I'm not just making a website when I'm talking about Sin Marronas. I'm making a platform that your tia will be able to access on her 3G phone when she's sitting in Samaná. It's not just going to be something that you can look at on your Mac. It's going to be a static website that won't be too heavy and will actually be accessible in multiple places. So there's a lot of different types of limitations that folks don't think about, unless you are really thinking about accessibility comprehensively. And there's just really great work being done, um, not just in terms of like Caribbean digital scholarship, but also African digital scholarship. You actually don't need the internet to go on a website. But these are not things that people like really contemplate unless they don't have access to data all the time. So yeah, that's kind of like how I feel about how we do this restorative justice work, not just producing for the West, but really taking these problems to the South and figuring out how is it that this functions in this space.
The next question is, how has the legacy of Trujillo continued to impact this region?
Oh man, I think that we really need a class for this. And really because of that, I would take a second to plug the the Center for Workers Education's master's degree in Dominican Studies, which if Natalia, if you have a second to like look it up and drop it in the chat, there is a great course there called Dominican Migration from 1960 into the present. And I think that Trujillo's dictatorship had many social, political, educational, migratory implications. Not only did Trujillo and Balaguer, right, who was critical to his dictatorship and to the ideology of his dictatorship, really gut the education system in Dominican Republic and change textbooks and change the nationalist discourse in unarguably a very anti-Black, pro-Spanish, Hispanophile way, but there is just a lot of trauma that happened in virtue of that. We know the canonical stories of Las Semanas Viramal. We know the canonical stories of many survivors that were silenced during the Trujillato. And I really do recommend for anybody who is going to Santo Domingo to check out El Museo de la Resistencia, that I think does amazing curatorial work to really tell these stories in a public-facing way. I think that many ways, like, we are all products of the Trujillato. Our grandparents came to this country, for many of us, getting away from the lack of access that they felt that they had. And there is also many ways in which Trujillo set up the Dominican middle class to be able to immigrate, and being able to pay off the national debt and give people certain institutions. Like my grandmother was part of the first textile factory that Trujillo opened in Santo Domingo. So it's it's not a single story, but it is certainly a story of trauma and violence. And I think that today we still feel the repercussions of Trujillo in very tangible ways, and that the Dominican curriculum has not been comprehensively changed in education since the Trujillato, and that there is still this like ethos that was made by the Balaguer regime and Balaguer era educators, to like keep this nationalist divide, this idea that the island is intrinsically different. And we very much live in that every day today, when folks continue to feel that there is more that divides us than we have in common. When I feel and genuinely in my interactions with people that that is not the majority.
Thank you for that answer. I think I'm going to email everyone after this talk the links and the resources that you've mentioned throughout this lecture, just to make sure that we all have it in our own computers and everything. Yeah, I wasn't able to pull that one out, but quick enough. But just give me some time. And then the second to last question. Is there any evidence that Indigenous and Black people live together as cimarrones in Ayiti and Quisqueya?
Yes, great question. I felt like this question was like asked by a student or something. Um, I'm going to drop two citations. The first one is my article about La Negra del Hospital. Like I mentioned, please go download it. And the second are these two citations, one by Ana Asuna and the other by Carlos Esteban Devi. Really great resources to find out more about Indigenous African collaborations during the early colonial period. I will give y'all this tidbit we very much have heard the word sing marrón. I'm talking about sing marronas, right? Most folks know that this is the term that translates to maroon, right? Canonically, even made famous by the Jamaican Maroons, right? But sing marrón was a term that it comes back really into the 1490s. The term sing marrón was utilized by Spaniards to talk about first the boar and like wildlife that would roam freely throughout the island, and then they used the term to apply it to indigenous folks that were running back into the forested area, and this then was transposed to be used to talk about African enslaved Africans that fled as soon as they hit the sand in 1502. So there is this like multi-layered Sing Marrón history, right? The fact that Spaniards used to use it to talk about animals and then applied it to indigenous and African people shows the dehumanization process, right? Kind of similar to the word mulatto, if we're thinking about the root of mulatto. But I think that our reclamation of Sing Marrón also comes from the fact that it was an indigenous word as well that has like a different spelling. So I think that there is much to be said about indigenous and African collaboration. I think Sing Marrón is a beautiful entryway into talking about it, which is kind of one of the impetuses behind the Sing Marrón as archive. But I hope that y'all are able to check out those citations and download my article that kind of gets at this similar question about indigenous and African collaboration by talking about La Negra del Hospital's presence in an indigenous stronghold. Excuse me. She was curing people in the space that was actively resisting Spanish colonization and had a mostly indigenous population. So I would say that all three of those places are good resources for that question.
Thank you for providing those resources. And to finish things, the last question is, where do we go from here? So any final thoughts or considerations, or kind of a last note to leave us?
Yeah, I will first of all thank you, Natalia, for organizing this workshop. I'm very grateful to have any opportunity to speak to my NYC community. Ay, no me hace tanta falta. And I just want to say thanks, folks, for attending. I love to see some really familiar faces in this chat. Hi, Lisa. And Elizabeth, it's great to see you. Yeah, but I'm really grateful for the space. And I think that there was one question in the chat that asked me to talk about my book. So I'll briefly say, please look out for my book in like the next it's an academic book, so it's gonna take me a minute. Not just because I have to write 2 new chapters, but because academic publishing takes a while. So it is going to be at least another 3 years before it's on your bookshelf. But I do hope that you'll take a moment to read my article. I think that not just reading it, but like passing it on to someone who you think might be interested, or if folks are teaching, adding it to your syllabi. I find it so vital that we start figuring out how to tell these stories, even if we don't have folks' names yet, because there is just such a formative space that Santo Domingo provides us. And this will be my last note to say that I think it's important to do Dominican studies, not just because we're the first of XYZ colonial experience, but because this is a site of of methodological development, right? Because we were the site of the first XYZ experience, we had to figure out how to resist that experience. And in many ways, if we think about Santo Domingo as the originator of anti-colonial thought, then we can start getting to these spaces of how is it that we can deconstruct this nationalist Dominican history, this nationalist divide that is such a central part of our everyday life. So I hope that folks got something from this conversation. I feel like I certainly enjoyed being able to speak about this long archival journey of mine, and I can't wait to see some of your applications for guerrilla archiving.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sophia Monegro, for this insightful presentation. And I hope you all enjoyed this talk and are leaving with something valuable to think about. I want to thank you all again for attending our last lecture of this Talking About Race Matters series. If you enjoyed tonight's talk, please consider supporting the Dyckman Farmhouse with a donation. Your generosity keep us hosting events like this one that are free and open to all. Gifts in any amount are sincerely appreciated. And for more information about what's going on at Dyckman Farmhouse Museum this fall, check out the links in the chat to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you so much again, everyone here, and Dr. Sophia Monegro. I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Happy spooky season.